called out to Dymchurch in the early hours of yesterday morning when the boat began taking on water. 2 of those rescued were children. It's raised concerns of whether there are enough resources to patrol the UK's coastline. Tony Green reports.
20 people were rescued here at Dymchurch when an inflatable boat began to sink in the early hours of yesterday morning. 2 men on board were British nationals. 33-year-old Robert Stilwell from Dartford and 35-year-old Mark Stribling from Farningham appeared at Medway Magistrates Court today, charged under Section 25 of the 1971 Immigration Act. The legislation deals with offences where a person helps someone breach immigration law when they're not an EU citizen. The operation has underlined concerns that the UK doesn't have enough resources to patrol its coastline.
The fact is our coastline is very, very exposed to the sort of incident that we saw yesterday. And the problem at the moment is it's unquantifiable because law enforcement is so thinly spread. We really don't know the extent of the problem as yet, but clearly there's a developing problem that could get much worse over the summer.
What we saw at the weekend was an incident that could have been a tragedy, but was averted because of the hard work of our coast guards, our lifeguards and the border force, and we saw the system working. That the craft was detected, it was brought safely in, and the people on board are now in the custody of the border force.
The other 18 people on the boat are all thought to be Albanian nationals, including a woman and 2 children. A Home Office spokesman said that their details are being checked by border force officials in Dover. The Britons who appeared in court today have both been remanded in custody. They will next appear at Maidstone Crown Court on June the 27th. Tony Green, ITV News.
In other news, a motorcyclist has died after crashing through the front of a hairdresser's in Gillingham. It happened at around 5:30 this morning at Kirk Hairdressers on Gillingham Road. The man in his 50s was pronounced dead at the scene. Hundreds of homes have had their gas supply reconnected after a huge explosion in Whitstable. Emergency services were called to the Estuary View Business Park in Bournemouth Way on Friday night, where a fire had broken out. An engineer was taken to hospital with burns to his face and body. 600 properties were left without gas. SGN says supplies have now been restored. The cause of the gas explosion is being investigated. 2 men responsible for a £100,000 crime spree in Kent are starting a jail sentence. 31-year-old James Steele and 34-year-old Wayne Byrne were sentenced for a total of 5 years for stealing transit vans and their contents. The foundation stones for a £4 million new housing development for veterans of the armed forces has been laid in Kent. The 2 apartment blocks will house wounded or sick veterans, as well as those that need a little bit of help. Abigail Bracken reports now from Aylesford.
The government minister and the local MP just about managing to lay the foundation bricks for 24 new homes for veterans of the armed forces. Homes that will help ex-servicemen and women rebuild their lives.
Well, I've been here 18 months and I've made some good friends. It's been extremely supportive. It's enabling me anyway to move on now. So I'm hoping that the buildings here are being built for us and I'm hoping to actually move into one of the new builds.
People are going to need it. There's lots of people coming out of the army now that are going to need help, even for older veterans, people my age that are leaving now. They're going to need somewhere to help them out with their families.
The new housing is costing over £4 million to build. £2 million has been raised by the Royal British Legion Industries and another £2's come from a government grant.
Here's a good example of what government is doing in support of the voluntary sector in providing for that need. The majority of veterans make a transition from service life to being veterans very well, but there are a small number who need a bit of support, and projects like this with government support are designed to support them.
When it's finished, it'll be 3 stories high, and inside it'll be fully furnished for those that need it, with anything from a kettle to a duvet, whether it's for a family who suddenly needs short-term accommodation or for a veteran who's left the armed forces with nothing.
Where we find we've got a shortage is in single accommodation, and that's at both ends of the age spectrum. So shortage of accommodation for young veterans. And we've also got a number of more elderly people who are living in family homes who would enjoy moving into something more modern, much more smaller, more appropriate for their needs.
And the building's not stopping here. Veterans can look forward to many more new homes in the village in years to come. Abigail Bracken, ITV News, Aylesford.
Rare Tudor treasures have gone on display in Kent. They are 2 prayer books that belong to Anne Boleyn, one of Henry VIII's unlucky wives. This is the first time visitors have been able to see signed pages from the books, which are on display at her childhood home, Hever Castle. Derek Johnson reports.
Fit for a Queen. This is one of Anne Boleyn's prayer books, on display in Hever Castle to commemorate the 480th anniversary of her execution. The books are precious and always draw crowds, so much so that the castle live streamed the first showing of both pages carrying her signature.
Here with me today are 2 of Anne Boleyn's personal prayer books, which contain notes that we believe pertain to her life and death. And her inscription here reads, "Remember me when you do pray, that hope doth lead from day to day. Anne Boleyn."
Such is Anne's popularity that this post has become by far the most visited on the castle's social media pages, attracting comments from around the world. Queen of England for just 1,000 days, Anne Boleyn failed to produce a son for Henry VIII and was beheaded in the Tower of London in 1536. Dating back to the 13th century, Hever was Anne's childhood home and was later owned by another of Henry's spurned wives, Anne of Cleves. She was lucky enough to survive. Derek Johnson, ITV News.
Brighton Festival has been hailed as one of a kind by its guest director, Laurie Anderson, after it came to a close last night. It's thought around 200,000 visited the event. Crowds that flocked to the Brighton Pavilion over the weekend to watch the Dr. Blighty light show was so big, organisers had to stop them from spilling into the road. And the world record for the longest ever game of football has been broken in Lancing. The 105-hour mark was crossed by the 2 teams this afternoon, the match being staged in memory of 3 Sussex players, including Jacob Schilt and Matt Grimstone, killed in the Shoreham air crash.
We've got such an amazing team behind us, which, are patching us up as we go along. We've had probably about 10, 11 hours sleep in total since Thursday, but yeah, just keep going, go for each other and go for the 3 boys behind us.
Well done to them. A well-known fountain which forms the centrepiece of Victoria Park in Ashford is to get more protection as a listed monument. The Hubert Fountain, which was first created in the 19th century, has now been upgraded to Grade 2 listed status. Now, whether you've already decided to vote to leave or to remain in the EU, or if you are still undecided on the EU referendum, ITV wants to hear from you. We are broadcasting 2 special live programmes hosted by Julie Etchingham.
The EU referendum on June the 23rd will shape Britain's future. To mark this historic event, ITV will broadcast 2 special live programmes. The first, Cameron and Farage Live, the EU referendum, will be on Tuesday, June the 7th. Then the ITV referendum debate will air just 2 days later on Thursday the 9th of June, featuring politicians from both sides of the argument to remain or to leave the EU. We want to hear from you on the questions you'd most like politicians to answer on the EU referendum. Simply submit your questions in one of the following ways before Friday, June the 3rd, and you could be part of a live studio audience on one of these programmes to put to the politicians the issues that matter to you the most. Simply send us your questions to itv.com/referendum programmes, or you can email us on debate@itv.com.
So please do get in touch. Will the warm weather continue? Let's take a look at the forecast now with Philip Adri.
From blizzards to pool, driving through Europe, Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Hello there. Well, it's been a fairly pleasant bank holiday weekend, but over the next 24 hours, things will take a turn for the worse. The Met Office have a warning set to come into force overnight to cover some heavy rain, the potential for some thundery bursts, and also the potential for some localised flooding. And we can see just why. This is the current situation. Thickening cloud already in the Far East. They're soon to be accompanied by some rain. That will work its way steadily westwards over the next 24 hours. Heavy at times, and as I said, the potential for some thundery bursts and the potential for some localised flooding. So for tonight, we'll dry out towards the